so let's start. Let's start talking about what it means to grow under the canopy of a family tree and what comes to you immediately when you start to think about the family tree. We're talking about the scripts of our family, which goes through generations and generations. So, first of all, I want you to make yourself comfortable and sit very loosely on your chair. Feel the heaviness on your chair, feel the gravity of your bottom. If you can sit straight, put your back as far as you can and press your feet to the ground. We're grounding ourselves. Our ancestors were walking on the ground every day, and we sometimes don't have enough connection with this force. This is to support us today in order to be in touch with the generation which came before us. So from this moment, when you're feeling comfortable in your chair, I'm inviting you to this journey to find out about family, your own family, families of your clients, families which are giving and supporting life. This session is being recorded for your kata purposes. The main session, the breakout rooms are not being recorded. So this is the information I need to give you from administrative point of view. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Alex Piotrowska. I studied MSc in Family and Child Psychology in Poland, and I started my work as a school counselor, supporting children and parents. In the 90s, I trained in transaction analysis, and I work also at the same time as a nanny. So in 2000, I started my private practice in London, and I'm still practicing in London. Since 2002, I trained in family constellation method, first in UK, later with other trainers in Europe, and with Bernd Hellinger, who was the originator of this method. I developed my own methods using constellations, metaphors, working with images, soma and somatic experiences, psychological distance, and transferences. So I'm pulling lots of things together in this workshop. At the moment, I'm a trainer, TSTA, coach, and also I'm working individually and with group as a supervisor. So we have few contracts between here, between me and you as a group. This recording for the Yukata, and please feel free questions in the chat room. I will be reading them in a break and answer the most relevant. We will have about 3 breaks. Some of the breaks I invite you to have during exercise. So we'll have a few extra minutes to have a tea and stretch with the other person in a one-to-one room rather than a big room. And I have assistant and co-host Kasia, who is going to help you with the technicalities. Kasia, show yourself to the group. Okay.
Hello everyone. My name is Kasia. Just to let you know, I'm here in the chat box. So if there are any queries regarding the technical support, I'll try to help you. Yeah, enjoy being here with you. Hope you will have a good session with Alex.
And when we talk about contracts for breakout rooms, there are contracts between 2 or 3 people in a small group. Please participate as much as you wish. Please keep confidentiality regarding yourself, clients you bring, the other person who is with you, and share what is appropriate. Be also aware about your own process, which is present to you, what emotions are evoked. And if you don't have a video, it's okay. In the breakout rooms, if possible, have a video on so we have a more connection and eye-to-eye contact. If you don't want to be in a breakout rooms for any reason, please put no breakout rooms NBR before your name, so we know, and we will not put you in a breakout room. And I think that's about it. If you have any question, just let me know. So let's move and look at the family system, which is like a constellation. And constellations are fixed and moving all the time. So there is a certain force and gravity. And stars, they have own place in the universe, but they held together by invisible forces. So are you within your own family. So we have a certain forces pulling and pushing us all the time. And of course, these unconscious powerful forces rule interactions of each family member. We behave differently with brother and a sister, or differently with the older sister and the younger sister, or with the mother and the father, and so on. So we are at the intersection of many, many forces in our own constellation. So when you come to the thinking about your own family, you think who is in the center of this constellation, who is the closest planet, who is the furthest, and so on. And you start slowly feel the field of gravity in your own. In this workshop, we will be looking at specific definition of family, and we have two different family definitions. One is the biological, is a group of persons of common ancestry, is a clan, and is connected by bonds of blood, is biological, genetical, and this heritage is our multi-generational influence through the passage of life. This will be focus of our work today. If you look at the sociological, we'll think about the relationship of care amongst individuals living under one roof. The word famulus comes from Latin and it meant servant of the house. So in the old days, servants were as much as part of the family as slaves and really wide family. If we look at this way of looking at the family, now we can say our family can be patchwork family, can be one child family, can be single parent family. But this is another workshop which I'm going to leave behind, and we focus on our biological family. So let's look at what is going on. So in this way, we look at our ancestry and we look at the level of family. Every person is embedded in a complex system of bonding relations that include a minimum of 4 generations. So the 4 generations are mostly known to us. If we are the kids, then we can then look at our parents, grandparents, and great parents. Of course, we can look at the generation in front of us as well, our children and grandchildren. However, when we look at the family tree, we usually have more information and more connection with father's side or mother's side. So at the moment, I'm inviting you to do a very quick exercise and think about your parents. First of all, think about your father, and your father's on your right hand side, and put him behind your chair. For some person, it will be very short distance. For some people, it will be few steps back. Is where you feel your father is in your sphere or your psychological distance. So just feel what is your father influence bringing to you. What is your first emotion? What is your first thought? What is your first body response when you think about father standing behind you? And then find your mother. Put her on your left hand side in relation to you, in relation to your dad, and find where she can stand behind. So we have both our parents standing behind us in a distance which is appropriate. And again, when mom comes, what is your emotion? What is your thought? Do you have any bodily response? So here we're feeling immediately what is pulling or pushing us to different sides of our family tree. And they are not equal. Sometimes one is further, someone is closer. So we really look how it is to feel both your parents. And when you are with these feelings, with these thoughts, with these emotions, in your mind, please turn to them and look at them. And say to each of them, I'm 50% of you. If you don't know your family of origin, you still have your mother and your father. It means there is an image. However vague, there is a story. However faint, there is a kind of idea or emotion which you have in relation to this person who gave you life. So this is about connecting with your genetic imprint. And immediately you will have a lot of stories connected with both of you. So when we look at our parents like this, there is an opening for a narrative. And I just want you to say simply to each of your parents, I belong to you in 50%. So from this place, let's look at the further family tree. I just want to check out people having problem listening.
It's audible to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
It's much better. I couldn't hear you when you were speaking softly.
Okay.
I just lost you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I had some problems yesterday, so I just want to see whether it's me or the system. Okay. Thank you.
Alex,
So
can I ask that if there's an important question that you repeat it twice, so in case you do drop out?
okay, I will repeat the
you.
question twice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So when we look at the family system in that way, we can think about people who are in our immediacy. So if you look at this multi-generational perspective, we look at the children, our sibling as half siblings of a client, as well as many children who died young, were stillborn or aborted. So we look at all the people who have been conceived as our family, whether they were able to survive or not, because in that sense, they were part of our family. And if we look at the parents, we look at the parents' siblings and half siblings, aunts and uncles, sometimes cousins, if they were in a very important way included in a family. We're looking at grandparents and sometimes great grandparents. Some families, they don't have any information about grandparents even or great grandparents. So we listened for the stories about them. Sometimes the people are not included for a very important reason. And I'm going to talk a lot about inclusion and exclusion. So the people who were part of the family and they not named, they emigrated, they disappeared. There is a secrecy about them. They're very important. And also there are some people who are not relatives, but who forge a strong connection, bond which is binding them to the family on basis loss or gain. And this is something which Bert Hellinger included. For example, former love partners of our parents, because they open up a place for the partners. So if somebody was engaged and the fiancé died in a car accident, this person sometimes is very important to our mother, although she subsequently met our father. But this person in that sense would be included because she was in her emotional field. And we will be talking about this kind of bonding. So if you look at the family system principles, we think that families are a system of interconnected and interdependent individuals. And we focus on the wholeness. If we change in one part of the system, this change influences every other part of the system. And the system is constantly changing, acting, and reacting to input of various kinds, regulated by homeostasis. So we have to make a space for a new person coming to the system. And if you think about couple waiting for a baby, they make a physical space. Sometimes they change the layout of the house, but also there is an emotional change. And for example, the mother becomes a grandma and the other mother also becomes a grandma. And there's a very interesting dynamics between two grandmas to be, because the child isn't yet born, but the grandmas already claimed the baby. So there is a force already in the system at the moment of conception. There is a very important thing, that the systemic purpose, that primary purpose of family is survival. So of course it was very important for our ancestors when they were hunters gatherers, but is as much important in nowadays. We help our family the best we can, and we go to the great length to provide everything what is necessary for survival. The other is care for transmission of life. And we can have families which are very much focused on transmission of life, and the families who don't pay attention, but still they bring life to this world. So where it all comes from. So there are many thinkers, and one of these is Leopold Schondi. And when we look at Freud, he was focused on individual unconscious. Jung was focused on collective unconscious. Leopold Schondi focused on something he called family unconscious. And the heart of his theory was the claim that the genes of our ancestors are present in our unconscious and influence our choices. So connecting with this, our collective unconscious, through his method called fate analysis. And we can achieve a higher degree of liberty as we become free to follow or reject the fatal impulses coming from the presence of the ancestor in our psychic field. So if you think now, sounds very familiar, this kind of liberation of these fatal impulses. It's kind of very psychoanalytical, but on the other hand, it resembles some thinking about the script, that if we are autonomous, we will reject the script, which is something we collected over our years. So it's a very interesting person, Leopold Schondi, and the idea of fate analysis is very much connected to his life. He was a Hungarian Jew, and in 1944 he was in concentration camp for half a year, and he survived because there was a deal between Americans and Germans, which allow about few thousand Jews to immigrate to Switzerland. He became a psychoanalyst in Switzerland, and he lived there, and there is a Schondi Institute, if you're interested. But what he thought about fate was a connection of two things. First of all, he was talking about fate analysis, looking at aspiration of our ancestors. And the word fate is derived from common Greek noun, ananke, which has two meanings. One is limit or constraint on freedom due to some outside force. And the other one is blood relation, like a family. So fate involves both force and family. And Schondi was talking about directed fatalism, ability to choose fate. So as long as you know the fate of your family, you are able to find a good distance, good understanding, and have better choices. One of his followers was Anselin Schutzenberger, and she was saying that we can continue chain of generation, and knowingly or not, willingly or unwillingly, we pay debts of the past. As long as we had not cleared the slate, an invisible loyalty impel us to repeat and repeat a moment of incredible joy or unbearable sorrow, an injustice or tragic death, or its echo. And I'm really recommending a book by Anselin Schutzenberger, which is in the bookstore in the conference. She is already passed away. She lived until 90s. And we will talk a little bit of her thoughts when I bring up practical cases. But at the moment, let's go further and look at the transactions. So if we think about transactions, we think about exchange of strokes. But not every transaction is equal. When I was teaching in a banking school, one of the students asked me, what is $1 million transaction? What is the super transaction? And I thought about it. And it came to me that each of us have a very special transaction. So for example, one of the students told me about the fate transaction which involved football. When he was 17, he went in a high school to a different high school and passed football to a beautiful brunette. And they romanced and they married 20 years on. So we all have a special existential transaction. The transaction or exchange that change the course of your life. Think about what it can be, this special transaction. In your private life, in your work life, in your community. You met a person and you had this special transaction. Existential transactions are very high in value. And the highest value transaction is the life we get from our mother and father. This is something we cannot ever repay. In the moment of our conceptions, there was transaction happening between them, and we are fruit of our transaction. Everything else coming later is only about survival. So has a still value, but it's not as valuable as the first one. And it can be food, shelter, job, moral support, something which comes as inheritance from our family, but sometimes can be given by strangers. For example, when the child is adopted, there is a lot of survivor transaction from adopted family. So they take over in some ways, whatever the life was there. And we talk about high value transaction, which is care and exchange in couple relationship. And do we have an equal exchange? Do we have a special transaction? If you think about your relationship, how special were the transactions with your partners? How they change in value from the moment you started the relationship to the moment you ended the relationship. And sometimes relationship is ended and we still feel that we owe something to the others. So I want you to focus on the transactions in your life or in life of your family? And the question is really open. And I want you to talk a little bit about it with other people. So I'm going to put you in a breakout rooms now. And I will give you 15 minutes. And so talk about the special transaction which came up to you as the first, and exchange your ideas, and we will bring some materials to later discussion. Lovely to see you back. So I really would like to hear some of your experiences, some of your shares. What was your discovery today? Please unmute yourself, raise your hand. You can use your physical hand, or you can use your virtual hand, whichever is easier. Virtual hand is at the bottom where the reactions are, and you can put a hand like this. Okay, so. So is there anybody who wants to share something? Chidel Godar. Yes, Chidel, okay.
Well done. If you run at it, it's always easier to say it's Chanel.
Okay.
We had a very interesting breakout room. I think that we all really gained something from that. So thank you for setting the question. That was really good. In our breakout room, 2 of us had physical connections with people. And as I was thinking about it, I realized that the most important connection for me has actually been coming into faith. So I'm a Christian, and so meeting God and having Jesus as the center of my life has actually shifted everything. And so everything has flowed from that point, which was whenever I was about 9 or 10. So yeah, everything flowed from there. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. And also, yes, we didn't mention transpersonal or spiritual transactions, but they are also part of our ancestry and something which we can inherit or we can choose ourselves. So again,
Yes.
This is about the faith and about the choice. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Jane Scott.
I was in a lovely breakout room with 2 other colleagues, so thank you. But we were talking about whether this was part of the contract, about the transactions within, as I took it, the transactions within the family, and I, recalling my transactions within my family of growing up. That it was always very critical and a lot of game playing. But I can only recall a magical moment for me was discovering transaction analysis. Mm-hmm. And up until that point, I think I'd been feeling around in the dark. So in my mid-40s to discover TA, a little bit of sadness now, thinking I wish I'd known about it when I was younger, because it was challenging within my own family, and I think I had the tenacity to look out from my family and did some traveling, and obviously got my needs met elsewhere, not within my own family. So yeah, I thought that was really thought-provoking, so thank you.
Thank you. And I would say is finding some kind of ideas or ideology. Again, it comes through people. So I think this is also when we're ready to listen, the teacher will come, whatever shape or form. So thank you for this, Jane.
Yeah, well, I think for me it was nurturing. I think certainly my first encounter with TA trainers was nurturing. I hadn't experienced that before in my life.
So this is also important. We're talking about nurture our emotional, spiritual, or intellectual needs. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Thanks.
Next is Nia Clark. Nia, are you
we go.
there?
No, I'm
Yeah.
muted.
Okay.
I've been in the same room with Chidel, and actually she had really strong questions that she brought out of me. So, but what was that moment? What was that moment? And I remember I used to go to a GP's house. The wife was my teacher at primary school, and he was the GP of the village, and their daughter was a classmate of mine. Used to go and visit her, and we made pancakes. And I remember on that day when we made pancakes and her mom was coming and giving compliments. Oh, well done. What a nice pancake. I was probably 10. What a nice pancake. I thought, yeah, that's the life I want. I like their house. I like their life, not necessarily the materialistic bit, but more of the emotional connection and appreciation, the intelligence, what was in that house. And probably that was that moment when I realized, oh, my house probably is abusive and it has lots of stuff going on. And I can create this life when I grow up to have peace and to have space for everyone and have appreciation. And as I was telling this story, it feels I'm living in this house. I have a 12-year-old child and a 2-year-old child, and they're having that experience. And I have a lovely husband, and it's really, really nice. And I'm a Hungarian, by the way. So Leopold Sondi, it's just music for my ears. And I'm living in the UK for a long time now.
Lovely to have you, Nia. Yes, and
So
lovely.
Thank you for this.
Decisions, yes, at a very young age as well, to change the fate of your life. Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
Thank you.
and I think from then on, I followed that path. I know where I want to go. So that was a very important moment. And I was just age 10.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Okay, and we move to Chris. He's waiting very patiently.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to Lisa, who I shared the breakout room with. I was thinking about a very particular existential transaction that has become almost part of our family myth and culture. My father's first words to my mother were to approach her as she was taking tickets for a dance and to say to her, "Are you going into the dance afterwards?" And they recently had their 50th wedding anniversary, and I wrote a poem for them, which I called The Dance, which incorporated that first question. But part of my poem, the meaning of my poem, was to sort of think about what would have happened if she'd said no. And I would not be there, my sisters would not be there, our children would not be there. And just to think about, so I wondered, you know, do other families have kind of cultural within the fabric of the family? Is there a similar kind of existential transaction that everybody is explicitly aware of and that celebrates in that way? And the other thing that seemed to come out of Lisa and I talking about our own experiences of transactions in our own lives was both of us, I think, felt, I always wanted to be a priest when I was a kid. We had quite a strong Catholic upbringing. And that sort of went away with adolescence for me. And then I had a life in business and education before becoming a therapist. And it's only just occurred to me recently that I'm kind of a secular priest these days. Mm-hmm. So Lisa identified a similar sense in herself that she was actually doing now what she wanted to do when she was a child. And I have that sense too, and which has given for me a certain sense of fatalism. And I'm still wondering what that means, you know, the sense that I'm actually doing now what I wanted to do when I was a child, but in a different way.
It's very interesting, Chris. And I think when we look at the choice of our profession, that's something Shondi talks about as well, it's sometimes we follow our ancestor in a different shape or form. So for example, somebody who was a wise man like a village blacksmith or a wise woman and did something good for community will come to us few generations later when you look in your family tree. Mm. So it's worth looking. Thank you very much for this.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. And we have Sarah.
Hi everybody. I was thinking about where you said your teacher will come and how it comes through others. And I was thinking about my stepfather who came into my life in my late 20s, and that needed relationship. He was a nanoscientist and also a Buddhist, and completely changed my life in terms of more of a spiritual transactions. And I spent 10 years getting to know him, and was probably in my mid 30s where I was introduced to another person, and I was also in a relationship. And I read a very interesting book which was similar to TA, and at the same time I actually met a psychotherapist in TA, and that's how we all became aligned, and that's how I changed my role, went into education, into TA. But it also makes me think about how we have the transactions, but how everything aligns, whether it's a positive or a negative. My stepfather and me were both diagnosed with cancer 3 months apart. So again, there's something there for me that it was like it was meant to be together.
And quite often it is that if you look at the family tree of an adopted child and adoptive parents, there will be some kind of synchronicity. So if you look deeper, there usually is a quite good fit. You know, this is not by chance that you landed with those people when you were adopted. So I think this is something which is very difficult to explain, but you are the perfect fit for them and they're perfect fit for you, whatever experiences there were already in a system. So thank you for bringing this, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on and we look a little bit more how we can explain it in TA terms, and we start to share.
Alex, I
Yes.
think that Andrew also raised his hand, if I can.
Right, Andrew's there, okay. Oh, okay, Andrew was asking question about introjection in a chat room, and I'm going to answer it later on my slides. So there will be a lot about introjection, okay?
That wasn't really the reason I raised my hand.
No, you have a different, okay?
But I just really wanted to share what I've only just kind of realised what the transaction is. I didn't quite grasp it in the beginning. So Michelle and I we were both in the same boat, and we just spoke a little bit about our family history. And it's just occurred to me what, I don't know, the transaction or instruction is, because both of my sets of grandparents, one was my paternal grandparents brought up in Cornwall, and my
we're losing you, Andy.
are you still hear me now? Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
And to put it briefly, both families grew up at a time and in a place where there was a lot of poverty. Very poor people indeed. And my maternal grandfather was from somewhere in rural Scotland. And he went to college and qualified as an engineer and came to Leicester to get a better life. And my dad, he was from Penzance in Cornwall, and again, he managed to go to grammar school in the late 1930s. And he also, after the war, came to Leicester for a better life. And my brother and I, we've been brought up to value education and work. And I think the transaction to is, it's not a material one, it's about keeping poverty out of this family. And I've only just realised that's what it's about.
Yes, it's about survival. It's about survival of the
Yes.
family, the next generation, the best way
Yes.
they can be. Yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you, Andy. Thank you for sharing this. So let me just see somebody. Okay, so let me move a little bit more and then we can have another round of questions, okay? So let's look at how we look at the script. And we look at the script as something which we come two different scripts together. So we have scripts on your mom's side and the scripts on your dad's side. So both are what we really using as a script analysis. This is the classical way. This is the school of thoughts from 1966. And we look at these different levels of looking at injunctions from child to child. We're looking for model from adult to adult, and we look drivers from parent to parent. However, this is something which usually we can think about when we think about our own lifetime history. So this is the story of injunctions and drivers and modeling on a behavioral level, what we directly experience from our parents, sometimes from our grandparents, sometimes from other people who are around. When we look at early Burns' writing, he's saying the most intricate part of clinician job is following up the source of the script to grandparents. This is in the Hello book, 1972. And we didn't have much about it. There are about 2 or 3 cases in whole Burns' writing about Grand Chief in one Fiji island and one doctor somewhere, but there is not so much more written about. And I think this is a very important for few reasons. So let's move forward to 2000 and we look at Tudor and Summers' model, which I adapted here. And this is script helix. So we have a father's sphere of influence, but also from the father, we have grandfather on the paternal side and a grandmother on the paternal side. And on the mother side, we have grandfather and grandmother. So we have a lot of information in our field, which is sometimes given to us directive and direct, and sometimes this is totally unconscious and indirect. So if I think about what I became, it comes from what my dad gave me, my mom gave me, and their parents as well. I was lucky to have access to all of my grandparents. So I have direct experience. However, there is quite a lot which I didn't understand as a child. And we need to look at what is geopolitical context. And for me, it was legacy of the First War, when my mother's grandfather lost both his parents and became an orphan. Second War, when my paternal grandfather was held in German jail, and afterwards the communism. So all of these shaped their life, and perhaps they didn't share it overtly, and some of it, it was very hidden as a trauma of their life. So only looking through some records, listening to some stories, there is a full picture of what actually went on in their lifetime. When we create our script from our direct experience, we focus on our known memory. But there is a lot of introjects and a lot of identification on a child level, which we are not aware of, and maybe we can find out later in life. So I want you to look at your grandparents or whatever you know about your grandparents and think about what is the message you can connect with them. So we will do an exercise. Think about your grandparents' generation. Even if you don't have grandparents, you have stories about grandparents. So for example, I had a client recently who said, my grandfather, when my mom grew up in Ireland, he was a drinker and he left for Australia. So there is a story and there is some meaning in this narrative. So really connect to the story of your grandparents as it was transmitted to you, as you understood it. So there is some kind of thread. And if you think about your grandparents, to which one of them you are most drawn to? Is it the grandma or grandpa, on which side? And think about the message which was given to you consciously. So for example, like in Andy, it was this ethics of a hard work and keeping poverty away. But sometimes it can be something else. So, and also look how, if you can make a connection, it is connected to important key event of their life. So what's happened in their life, which made this so significant. And I would put you in a breakout room, have a time to stretch, have a time to have a cup of tea. So this time I will allow to run it a little bit longer and talk to another person in your breakout room. I'm going to recreate you and see you in 15 minutes.
And I was talking in the small group certainly about the pandemic and what a leveler that's been in terms of script issues that have come up for me and having my own resources. But yeah, I really like that script currency and what was important within the family. I was curious about the Pied Piper. What was that?
Is a special skill which you have. You know the story about Pied Piper who took all the mice from this village and he became very powerful because of that. So we have a specific skill sometimes which we can passion.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So yeah, no, I enjoyed that, and I don't really have a question other than to say I think it's thought-provoking, that the script currency, and whether you, I suppose, whether you continue to confirm your script in how, in what's important. And certainly the beauty part, I probably do confirm that, but I equally like that part of my script. You know, for me, that's a good leveler. So there are good things that we can take from our script, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. But it's good
So
to have a conscious choice, yes? So
yes,
you can, this is your inheritance, but you actually embrace it and you enjoy it rather than you take it mindlessly. And I think that's that's the difference, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you enjoy it and you take it without it being given to you, and you're accepting it mindlessly. Leslie. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jane.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. And we have Linda here. Hello, Linda. Linda.
Hello. I've had a real penny dropping moment in our breakout room, because I realized that my the currency in my adoptive family, because I'm adopted in my adoptive family, and from my father, who I was very close to, was very much about loyalty. He worked hard. You work hard at things. And I was trying to work out what the actual currency was, and there was something around be perfect and work hard. And then I realized it was loyalty, because he was very loyal in his personal life as well as in his work life. And then as I said that, my heart just stopped, because just yesterday I was told by somebody, very important person, don't ever let anybody question your loyalty. And that statement was incredibly important to me, because when I was a child, I was asking my mother about my birth parents, and she shut me down and said to me, if you continue this line of inquiry, you will be rejecting me and your father. And, you know, you need to be loyal to us. So there's a sort of, for me, there's a positive and negative part of that. And so for me to have my loyalty questioned is and it is sometimes, and it has been recently, and it's been incredibly hurtful to me to have my loyalty questioned.
I appreciate
and to
it,
realize
Linda.
that it's actually part of the currency is just, that was amazing that came out this morning. Yeah.
And when you make this kind of connection, then it's a beginning of a decision process. So you can be loyal to yourself firstly, and whatever it means to you. And I'm really saying, when we do a decision, I'm looking at it as a redecision process, and how John McNeill describes it in his recent EAJ articles, that is not something which happens overnight, but we're really working at it in everyday relationship, in all encounters. And I really encourage you to read his papers about, you know, how to incorporate in a daily practice our decision, whatever it means to you to be loyal, for example. But this is a very good example. Thank you very much for sharing, Linda.
Alex, there is a request for reference for script currency in the chat box.
Yes, I will give you the reference with the slides, okay, because I can't do it right now. And you will get a copy of the slides. Just I'm going to find the final shape of it, because I always come over prepared, so I just want to, thank you. Chris has found it, yes. It's an old TA article, but I think it's a very useful one in terms of understanding the whole setup of our scene, where we as babies, we walk on the scene and the script is revealing, but there are certain requisites, there's certain props on the screens. And then we can use and choose to use some of them. So we are not actually forced. We have a choice from our beginning to throughout the whole lifetime. Okay. Any other questions or comment? Okay. So I just really want to look in the hot potato thing, which I think is a very important one, because this is what's the basis of actually unintegrated trauma, and we can have and we can look at it like from this place. So if you think about something which is okay.
Alex?
Yes?
I just have a quick question before we talk.
Okay, let's go. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know about the currency. It has the love arrow in the middle. And us in our breakout room, we were discussing about the love arrow. And I just wondered if you could just expand a little bit on it.
Well, your love is conditional because you're dealing in this currency.
Right.
So you belong to us if you focus on beauty or if you focus on money. So this is the boundary of the clan, okay? And the person who is the black sheep would be operating outside of it. Does it make sense?
So is it the love coming from the person?
From the parents, the person who is actually originator of the script decision. Mostly it's parents, but sometimes it can be some other people, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the context. It can be religious background, you know, if you work with very close religion, like let's say I had a client who was a Mormon. So there are very different rules around being a Mormon.
You've frozen, Alex. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that or if that's
Intergenerational issues that have impact on a client. And this is an unresolved trauma because the clinical experience indicates that the original owner of the hot potato has not dealt with it. So for example, if the client mother didn't integrate her grief over that baby boy, this would be in our client parent ego state and child ego state. And this person is discounting his or her ability to take ownership and also discount the impact of the unintegrated trauma on later generations. So, you know, if you think about water, water always finds the way going down. In that same way, unintegrated trauma will be passed over to the next generations without thinking about it because it's on unconscious level. So when we look what's happened, when the person undergoes a traumatic event, there's either a freeze and we have this kind of depressive responses, or we have dissociation, or we have split in personality. So sometimes if you think somebody is like a Pollyanna script, always happy, there would be the reaction to actually original trauma because the trauma is not integrated. So, and we have an example here, grandma who lost her child. So she was crying over this child and she put it to her daughter in child ego state, but also it was introjected in parent ego state. And it goes from the mom to daughter. So we have 3 generations of ladies who grieve over a baby. And this is the example which Jane McQuillan and Enid Welford give in TAJ, but also they wrote it in Transaction 2006, TAJ 2014. And they will talk about this, that we have this original pain, which is happened in client's grandmother. So mother have it in her child ego state, parent in a child in a parent. So we have here P2 and C1. This is the original pain, yes, but also is in the C. And then in our client, it will be on both levels. It will be in C1 of our client and it will be P1 of our client. So this is the client who has a relatively happy life, let's say, and it comes to the moment of conception. and she's not able to have a children. And this original hot potato wasn't dealt with. So when we look in a child ego state, yes, so this is within this child ego state of a mother, there is this hot potato picked by mother's child, and original trauma is in grandmother. Yes. So then we really look that like the parent ego state is not free, and there will be always some kind of pain associated with this trauma. So I really encourage you to read this and read some other articles. Also, Gloria Noriega is writing a lot about how the transgenerational trauma is coming through generation, through introjection, projective identification, and so on. And she did quite a lot of research on it. But I think that's about as much as we have time for today. So there will be some kind of looking at our script in context of what's going on between our parents, our grandparents, and so on. But I think I just wanted to sort of open up this field for you, which is sometimes overlooked in TA, which is to do with generations who are past, and also to do with things like context of a client geopolitical life and what came with their story, their culture, and so on. So I think we have a few more minutes to final thoughts and shares before we close this session. And I hope you enjoy all of this. And I'm really curious about your comments or your thoughts, what you're taking away. Jane.
Alex, I just want to say it's been an amazing workshop. Thank you so much. I've learned so much in the workshop, and I had so much thought, food for thought. And it's interesting. We talk about fate. There's definitely something fatalistic about what's going on for me. I don't want to go into too much now in the public arena, but just coming into your workshop and an understanding about different generations and transgenerational scripts. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And Del.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you too, and also to ask, where can you get this sort of training? Where could I get more training in family constellation theory?
I mean, there is a training going on in this country and worldwide. You know, there is a Center for Systemic Constellation in London, which is running courses. And I'm going to also run a course online from September with Link Center, which will be on, which will be starting on, I think, second weekend of second Friday. It's Friday mornings. Right. So it's going to be in slide also when you get it. This possibility to learn more about this.
Great.
Stuff. Okay.
That would be really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else?
Alex, I was just going to say Enid Welford runs constellation workshops.
She still runs workshop. Yeah, I didn't know that she's still active. Wonderful. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Alex, there is a request for printout and the slides, I guess. So perhaps.
Printout of the slides, yes, it will be gone to your email address, the one which you provided to the Yukata, so you will get a whole set of slides. Yes. Okay. Okay, so Jayakara. Okay.
Yeah, I just like to say, Alex, that I've just loved this workshop. It's been a lovely balance. There's been a lot of theory in it, which is lovely, but there's also been process, giving us time to embed it in our own experience, which I found very helpful. And I've had insights to my family process, so I just want to appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a lovely stroke. Thank you. And thank you for the people who sending some strokes in the chat room. Yes, it's a different way of sharing. Thank you. I appreciate. Yeah. So there is a comprehensive reading book. Some of the books you can buy in a bookstall, which are on discounted price. If you're interested, I would really recommend Anselin Schutzenberger. She's writing very interesting stories, and also anything to do with trauma, which is by Franz Rupert, who is a German psychotherapist. And he used to run trainings in this country, but I think this is over, but maybe some online will be available as well. He has a very big depth of his thoughts about how trauma is connected to family scripting. So, anything else? Yes, and thank you for being such a wonderful audience, for being available to each other, for being also able to share your stories. It's very brave to talk to the big audience about your personal stuff. So I'm very grateful for all those who spoke and allow us to witness your insights, your inspirations, and your way of maybe writing a new chapter in your script. So thanks a lot. Okay, I think I would say goodbye for now. We have to still for a few more minutes, but I don't see any question. So let's have a healthy lunch. And yes, thank you also, Kasia, for being my assistant and helping me to hold all of you in this group. And I wish you all the best. I wish you all to have lots of love in your life, in your family life, and sending it to all the further generation. So,
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you,
Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. You're a star.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Cheers, Alex. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andy.